Detective Josh Riley with the Wilmington Police Department. It is August 10th, 2007 at 2:13 p.m. And you're fully understanding that this recording is going to take place while you are in for a doctor's visit, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So many of these cases are he said, she said, and that's always going to be difficult. But we made a point to look closely at a case in Ohio where the physician, Dan Massas, went to prison for 3 years.
In that case, it involved a doctor who was doing workers' comp examinations, and a lady was being examined for a toe injury, and the doctor dropped his pants and asked for oral sex. In that case, the police officer involved believed her and actually set her up with a recording device and sent her back.
You had just stated to me that Dr. Massas, after having his back to you and doing something with his hands, turned around, exposed himself to you, and asked you if you do blowjobs.
Yes.
And your response was, what? And he asked you again if you do blowjobs, and then you said, I'm getting out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And while that occurred...
I think I said it. It all blowed my mind so much I was getting up and leaving.
Okay.
And that's what it boiled down to was, you know, if I go out and interview this guy and talk to him, is he going to admit that, okay, yeah, you got me, you know, I showed her my penis and asked for oral sex? Chances are, no. And I explained that to Cheryl. I'm like, this is where we're at. This is your word that's going to boil down against his word. And I'm sure he's going to deny it. If we can get a recording of you speaking to him, and there's an admission, I mean, there's all the weight in the world. I said, but that means you're going to have to go back and see this doctor. I said, and if you don't feel comfortable with doing that, I said, we're going to have a hard time prosecuting him. I said, I'm not going to force you, but it's your choice. And she was all for it.
I'm having trouble concentrating. Ever since I seen you whip out that big, I couldn't believe the size of
You're bad. Maybe sometime I will give you a snack.
a snack.
They arrested Dr. Massas, and after it got out in the small newspaper in the town, another woman came to the police and said, look, he did it to me.
This woman was had been abused over months and had been told by him that her workers' compensation benefits would be taken away, or she feared that that was truly the case, and she continued to go back.
There was the incident where he met her at the Frisch's restaurant to go over some x-rays or something. She thought it was odd, but he's a doctor and, you know, okay, I'll trust my physician. So she went and met with him, and he gave her some spiel about wanting to look at a house he wanted to buy. And if you want to ride along with me, we'll just talk and chat and I'll go through everything with you, no big deal. And ends up getting her on a backcountry road and pulls off a little gravel side lot. And when he came around the side, I mean, he had his penis exposed and ended up grabbing a hold of her and masturbating until he ejaculated on her. She tried not to go back. She ended up having to go back several times. And during one of those visits is where he again exposed himself. And that's where we got the attempted rape charge. She tries to clean herself off. She's again, you know, what do I do? You know, who's going to believe me? She goes home, takes those pants, puts them in a bag, and she's going to throw them away. When I had her come in and finally meet with me, and we went through everything from the beginning to the end, and I looked at her and I told her, I said, you know, I believe you. I said, I have no reason to doubt anything you're telling me. I said, you have no idea how bad I would wish we had those pants, because we could get DNA off those pants. And she looked at me, she goes, well, I still have them. And I'm like, so I just won the detective lottery.
Even with that evidence, the prosecution was told, you'll never get a conviction against a doctor. You just won't.
When we called around to some other offices looking for advice in terms of voir direing the jury and how to prepare them, the sentiment generally was good luck with that, and we wish you the best, but don't expect a good turnout. When we had the DNA in the pants, we knew that something had happened between them. That's when we really wanted to take a hard look at the medical records. And ultimately, it was the medical records that I'm convinced helped sway the jury. When you look at the medical records, what they showed was someone with weeks and months of no calls and no shows to appointments. The doctor was the one that was reaching out and attempting to reel her back in. He was directing his staff, his nurses, his administrative people to call her. That was part of the defense of this whole thing, was nobody is sexually assaulted by their doctor repeatedly and continues to return. We think that the records demonstrated just the opposite, that there wasn't a patient in the world trying harder not to return.
It's difficult when you have a physician and a patient in a room with no cameras, no nurses, no one else, and they do something of a sexual nature, say something, ask for something, or just flat out do something, and there's no witnesses and there's no way of proving it. You are down to he said, she said, he said. How do we prove it? We were just lucky that we could prove it happened.
There is, to some degree, the stars aligned for us. But for that, I'm not sure that he wouldn't still be practicing today.
And what they found when they backtracked, to make it even more interesting, was he had come to that town at the hospital in Wilmington, Ohio, to do occupational medicine after he'd been very quietly removed from another hospital for issues that included inappropriate remarks to patients.
His prior employers knew that he was a problem, and they wanted him gone. And they didn't care where he went as long as he was no longer their problem.
Dr. Massas went to prison for 3 years. He is now a registered sex offender. I talked to him at length. He denies that he did anything wrong, but he manages a car wash. He's never going to be a doctor again.